Anyway, thanks to everybody that did the Lunar Fins party yesterday. That was so great. We didn't dive or anything. We just came out there and ate hamburger, drank a beer or two.
It was amazing.
It was a very nice day. Really, we enjoyed it.
Yeah, we had, I think at latest count, we had 30 people that showed up from HUPS and Lunar Fins and Bay Area Divers and Brazosport Underwater Club and
Chum.
Huff. Sorry, Chum for sure. Chum, I think you guys ended up with 10 people.
Woo!
Which is pretty cool. Okay.
Actually, we had 31 because I did the count this afternoon.
Okay. Yvonne corrected me, 31.
31. So anyway, thanks to so much to the Lunar Fins for stepping out there and inviting the whole dive community.
I didn't have
It was nice to meet you. Jesus.
You might have We're so bright. Well,
So what's left to say after 3 days of this? 2 days going on. Let's see. Anybody been diving?
I mean, other than yesterday?
Yesterday.
Yeah, real trips.
Yes, Scott.
Yes.
You got it.
I was just down in Cayman last week, I guess. And the purpose for that was actually not to see any dead corals. I would definitely not want to go back. This is the second time I've been to Cayman this year, and if I ever go back in the rest of my life, I don't know. I mean, it's like 80% of corals are dead down there. Really? This is Grand Cayman, and this is the west side. We were on the north, near where Hell is. That's where we were this time. Wow. Previous time was down south, and they're just it's all dead. Anyway, I was there with Eric Keebler and OVI because I was getting my second tech certification. This one was a second deco tank with 80% O2, so I have 4 on my back now. And so I'm already rated to 150 with a 50% deco, but 80 and then down near 200, the main oxygen mixture gets changed to trimix at that point to get rid of the nitrogen and put helium in there, so you don't get the nitrogen all coursing through your veins at 200 feet. So that was cool. And the one thing I will say is I found out that those of you who were in Cuba, we did some deep dives there, relatively deep, 100 feet. So same thing I noticed at Cayman. You get down there over the wall, basically below 100. And first of all, someone like me, geological persuasion, that wall is so cool. Oh man, it's cool as heck. Anyway, everything's alive down there.
Wow.
Because the temperature doesn't get warm. Right. I mean, the light is less, but the temperature stays cool. Huge Cavera snappers, Nassau groupers, sharks, rays. Saw some eagle rays flying by. The corals, black corals, the sponges, they're all alive down there. Plus, excellent, massive, structure on the wall, and coral things coming over, and it was just, I'm in love. So anyway, that's my report from Cayman.
Thank you very much, Scott.
Okay, well, how about the virtual crowd here? Anybody want to talk about diving? You guys know this is a dive club.
I went diving this past weekend. Can you hear me?
Yeah, that's Joe.
Sandy.
Sandy?
Am I up?
Sorry.
You're hot.
Oh, sorry. Let's see. I dove into Brazos and scrubbed some props, and I did. Visibility was about 6 inches. If anybody wants to come try it next time. And our trip to the flower gardens got blown out. So I flew over to Florida because I wanted to get wet. And that trip got blown out. So I dove the Blue Heron Bridge. I've always wanted to do it in Riviera Beach. That was a blast.
Also,
And all sorts of little tiny stuff and a couple of big things, but seahorses and little tiny shrimp and just all sorts of fun stuff. I paid a guide to go with me. I'm a terrible follower, but half the stuff I would never have seen on my own. So it was a great thing to do, but it was a lot of fun. Anyway, that was my dive trip.
Okay. Anybody want to say anything about the lake? I know a bunch of you got wet in the lake.
Oh, who wants to talk about the lake? Let's get one of these chummers to do it. Pass this over there.
It was Mammoth Lake. No, that actually, the viz was actually surprisingly good. It was like 15 feet.
Where were you?
The viz was pretty good. I mean, last year the viz was crap, but this year viz was really good. I don't know if the other end of the lake where everybody else dives is like that, but the viz was surprisingly good yesterday.
It was cold down there.
The thunder climb was very cold.
I can't hear her.
Oh, pass it back. It should be on.
Yeah, what was the temperature?
Temperature below the thermocline was like 75,
Lower, 71.
71.
Yeah.
My computer was showing 75 when I checked it. And then above it was about 83. So above it felt really nice, but below it was a bit
Yeah.
nippy. Especially with almost a 10-degree difference.
Okay, thank you.
I saw one guy in a dry suit, so I figured. Definitely dry suit. He's on there.
Has Jesse been diving? Jesse, you've been diving?
That's not,
Hit your space bar, Jesse.
you're muted.
You're muted.
You're muted, Jesse.
There we go.
Space bar, there we go.
Unmute.
Hey, hi, everybody. No, I wish I have. Instead of being diving, I've been driving. We just got in from a road trip about 45 minutes ago from Texas to New Jersey. But here I am. And no, I wish I could tell you I've been diving lately, but or this past month or recently, but no. But I wanted to tune in tonight by Zoom from New Jersey to see Tanya. I've never met Tanya, and I just
Hi, Jesse.
Hi, Tanya. I've followed you and your husband through decades, and
Nice. Thank you.
But our paths have never crossed, and so they're crossing tonight by Zoom.
Awesome.
And of course, I'm a major. Besides the ocean in general, I'm really a lover of whales and humpback whales. So I really want to see your work tonight.
Cool.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, let's get on closer to that goal here. So let's see, do we have any officer reports?
Not here. I guess not.
Anything to say about trips? Oh, yes, Trish,
Trish,
give her the mic.
give her the mic.
Is the mic working?
Yep.
Okay, I'm easy. Bonaire, October 12th through the 20th. Yeah. We've got folks that are signed up. We need more. We only have until July 15th, which is going to come up pretty quickly to get our final payments in. So please, please, please join us. The coral is bouncing back. So those who went last year, I don't know if you've heard, but it got really bad over the winter. And I'm hearing really amazing reports every single day about how it's bouncing back and some of the new stuff that's actually popping up. This is not the time and place, but there's the camera. Hi. I know there's a lot going on about the different bacteria that are going around, the different parasites. And one of the things that they've discovered in Bonaire is that there's a parasite that is killing some of the coral, but it's creating new coral. And anyway, that's a whole different topic, but it's really interesting to hear that. So it's kind of like we've got this going into extinction, yet we have something else that's coming about. So it's great news. Please join us. It's going to be a really great time. and we're gonna have a lot of fun. But let us know quickly.
I'll
Like,
give
hit a
a
button.
quick little update on the Philippines trip. Of course, we had 16 people going to Dumaguete. Going to be at Atlantis Resort. That will be for 5 days. And then we jump on the Atlantis Azores, which is a fantastic boat. I hope they have the same chef that they did the last time, because it was like 5-star. So it should be really good. And that will be in July and early August. We're pushing back the August meeting until the second Monday, because we'll be arriving right about that time frame. So anyway, it's a good one.
So Russell, you want to follow up on
I will.
status is, so let us know.
Okay, there was a trip for the BVI for May of next year. I haven't got any dates yet. And I indicated that it needs to be at least 10 people going. I only had 4 people tell me they were interested in going. If I don't hear anything by, say, the first part of September, we're just gonna blow it off. So I need at least 10 divers to go to make the trip. So if you guys are interested,
Is that
get with me.
Virgin Gorda or?
Pardon?
Is that Virgin Gorda?
Right.
Oh, I want to go there so bad.
Okay.
Well, now you got one more.
And I got one more. And
Maybe 2 or
Kathleen
3.
probably go too. So
When did you say it is?
it's going to be in May. I haven't set the time yet because May of next year, May of 2025. So if you're interested, please get with me because I need to let Casey and her husband know if we're really interested in going. Okay.
Why don't we can put probably a full court press on it, and that and the Bonaire trip, and probably get enough people. We'll see.
Hey, Craig or Dennis, can I make a public service announcement?
Absolutely.
Okay, first off, I would like to thank everybody that showed up for the checkout dive. Y'all all supported me so much and the club so much, so thank you so much. And the Lost and Found department looking for this, and I'm going to contact all the clubs and see who's trying to dive without their feet.
Brian, there was also
A drink bottle.
Turcotte was looking for a water bottle. Did one
Yeah.
show up?
The red
Yes,
one.
I have a maroonish colored water bottle also. I forgot
Okay,
about
so
that.
we need to tell Paul Turcotte that it has been found. Good.
Oh, yeah. And it's all safe with me, I promise, for a nominal fee.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks again. It's a great event, and I kind of missed out here. I'm supposed to welcome new faces, and I see some chum folks that aren't exactly new to me, but maybe we want to give them the mic and let them start over there, let them introduce themselves
Sure.
in the interest of the community and all that.
These are what?
Mammals Recount.
I'm Marcy, AKA Water Monkey.
Well, you got nicknames?
Yeah.
What are we missing here? This is a target-rich environment.
Scott, the chum on the board. My name is McLaughlin.
I'm Jennifer, also known as Lake Diver.
I'm Trish Treasure.
Well, I'm Craig Beasley. I'm known as Chuck Norris.
Not unless you're actually watching the chum board.
That's my nickname in Southeast Asia, actually.
Yeah.
Goes back a long time.
Well, actually, Brian is a member of Chum, and I have been a member of Chum. I just have not anymore right now. I might come by, give you some.
I'm the Meg. So MEG, the Meg.
Okay, well, just one other little item here. There's no report on HUPS this time. Usually it seems like, except Betsy and I are getting ready to open for entries. Everybody remember to hit that record button. Not just take stills, but take some movies too, because we're going to be pushing especially hard towards the end of the year for what we usually do anyway, which is the anything goes video night, which we give in January. But this year is special. We got some special recognition from the Match Theater folks, and they've given us a slot to perform what they call the mixed match session. And it's supposed to be collaborative work, and as punishment for sort of bringing HUPS into this and making it the application, I had to review the other, they did a peer review of all of the people asking for, you know, a slot on this. And let me tell you, there's some weird stuff that's gonna happen. So, I mean, not that I'm a pretty open-minded fellow here, so, you know, it's the arts community, but I think it's gonna be a lot of fun actually to go watch this stuff. They have like a couple of musical acts that want to, you know, like an accordion band, for example. Okay, well, like accordions,
Yeah.
Anyway, that'll be in January, and we'll be talking more about it. I had ideas of having some really physical collaboration underwater, and then I thought about the safety involved. Probably that's not such a good idea, but I'll be putting something out about, you know, and I haven't talked to folks. I want to have a little group get together, but I've been thinking about it. We want to make a mark in the artistic community, so we want to do some weird stuff too. So I'm thinking, you know, how about, you know, the weirdest creatures in the ocean, or the ugliest, most beautiful, meanest, nicest, you know, we can all get film on that kind of stuff. So anyway, be thinking about it, because we'll be starting to hassle people more in the fall, October, November. We're going to get a little more type A about it, and then December we're going to be nagging the heck out of you. Send in your movies, and we take raw clips, you know, and we'll process them and put music to it and stuff like that. So anybody, anybody that's got stuff, GoPro or whatever, you know, whether you think it's great or not, send it to us, and we'll be doing some editing. Be a lot of fun, I think. Okay, should we do the everybody's favorite segment? Now is the gadget of the month.
Yeah.
Those of you joining us the first time, you know, we have the gadget of the month. This time, my better half is going to show you her favorite gadget.
Oh, by the way, I've ordered one of the last gadgets. It will be in here
We
tonight.
get no kickback on this, by the way.
There you go.
What was that?
That was your night, the night.
Clothesline. Yeah.
The clothesline.
Portable clothesline.
No, not the clothesline. The light, the night light.
Oh, these.
Yeah.
That's what I'm about to talk about. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, I put this in the newsletter, but these are made by Trident. They are flashing lights. Can you just hold that for me, and we'll just, because I need 3 hands for this. So we use these on night dives, and they have 3 batteries in them, and you just, so it's a little strobe.
Yeah.
Yes, and so this is mine, and I attached this to my camera rig, so it's hanging right out there. And stop it. And
Hold it up
this
close to
is
the,
Craig's. Oh, to the camera.
hold it up over here so everybody can see them.
So, okay, so when I first started using these on night dives, so we could keep up with each other and our dive guide could keep up with us as well. The first time I did it, I hung it on the back of my tank and they went right down behind it. So you couldn't see them the whole dive. I went, well, that didn't work. So the next time I started putting them on the arm of my camera rig right in the front, and you can see them perfectly. And I always know where he is, and he knows where I am. And these things last forever.
And they're not expensive.
And they are not expensive. You can get them on Amazon. Yes, unless I drop like that. And I travel with my extra batteries, of course.
Are they in different colors?
Yes, yes.
Doesn't show up well on the screen.
Yeah, mine is flashing red and his is flashing green, and you can get them in blue. I'm not sure how many colors they come in, but you know, you can differentiate each person.
How long's the battery last?
I don't know. I haven't had to put new batteries in yet. A long time. It says how long they last in the package that it comes with, but I threw it away.
They have like three button batteries in there, and it's an LED, so it'll last a pretty good time. By the way, gadget month is open.
Are they made by Trident? Betsy, do you say they're made by Trident?
Made by
Yes.
Trident on Amazon.
All right,
There was a
cool.
link to it in the June newsletter that I put this in there.
Might need to read the June newsletter.
By the way, you virtual folks aren't immune from gadget of the month either. The only requirement is, you have a favorite gadget, and it has something to do with traveling or diving or whatever, or photography. And it can't be an expensive item, because that's not a gadget. So I don't have a particular dollar limit, but I know it when we reached it.
Yeah, my wet wide angle lens is not gonna be.
Yeah, he
part
tried
of
to
it.
bring in an $800 lens, and I told him, that's not a gadget. That's an investment. Okay, what am I forgetting? Anything else? Should we do the photo contest first, or program?
Let's do the program.
Okay, take
Okay.
it away, Dennis.
Okay, I will hopefully turn it around. And our guest tonight is somebody that I've known for over almost 20 years. And I also know her husband from actually right at 20 years. So this is Tanya Burnett, and she is half of the Island Exposure Group, and the other one is Kevin Palmer, her husband, and they're down in the southern Florida area. And when I first met Tanya, it was on a trip to Raja Ampat, the first time I ever went onto the Kararu, and it was pretty wonderful. And I'm not saying that we became bosom buddies or anything like that, but I've been following her exploits ever since. And I know, for instance, that she has been elected to the Women's Dive Hall of Fame. I don't know if I got that correct, but maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong. And she has quite a resume. If you go on to Island Exposure, their website, you'll be able to see a lot of the things that she and Kevin have done. It's very impressive. I met Kevin down at one of a trip that we went down to the Blue Heron Bridge, and you might actually be seeing a little bit of that tonight. So right now we're going to start with a preliminary show that I put together. I stole a bunch of stuff off the internet of Tanya's and put it together with some of my stuff, and I hope that it will turn out okay. Away.
Martin, can you share the screen?
Can you see it now?
Yeah, that's good.
Tanya Burnett is our speaker tonight, but in a way, our connection started 1 year earlier when I met her husband, Kevin Palmer, at our HUPS on-air shootout. Ken Kinesic, as our trip provider, had hired him to be our photo pro to help us get better. I remember Kevin most for an awesome photo he showed us one evening of a large school of cow rays moving off into a sunset. Later, in 2011, our small group went to West Palm Beach to dive Blue Heron Bridge. While waiting for slack tide, we drove down to Fort Lauderdale to shop at Reef Photo. Kevin was there and he helped us. I bought this incredible 400 lumen solar light. It wasn't very powerful, but I got good use out of it. It was in 2005 when Tanya and I met on a trip to Raja Ampat on the Kararu. It was my first trip with a digital underwater camera, and I was trying to learn how it all worked. I never missed my Fuji Velvia after that trip. Tanya was the true pro, bringing back incredible shots dive after dive. After one dive, she showed shots taken of two wobbegong sharks fighting for mating rights. One had grabbed the other at its claspers. If this is shark foreplay, I'm glad I'm not a shark. right, we'll turn it over to Tanya now. Martin will do a few magic things, and Tanya, the show is yours.
Wow. Thank you so much for that amazing introduction and wonderful memory down memory lane of Raja Ampat and the first trip I ever did there. I think I've done 20 trips since to Raja Ampat, so I really know it well now. But I've never seen two wobbies doing that again, so that was pretty incredible. Well, thank you all for inviting me to present to you tonight. And without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. If I could do this. And I'm going to share and turn this on. So, is it going to open up? Am I not doing this right? Oh, yeah, there we go. Share. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Okay, how's that?
Yeah, minimize your, yeah, there we go. Or just have one, so you can have you as a talking head. Perfect.
One is a talking head.
That's you.
Okay. All right. Well, my presentation is ditch the tank. Obviously you're saying, why would I want to do that? Because we have so many wonderful opportunities to create an impactful image without donning a scuba tank. The surface provides so many unique environments, and so many animals come to the surface. Often you're less encumbered, you can move more freely, you're a bit quieter, you're not producing bubbles. Some animals are easier to approach you without scuba. Of course, the light is just amazing. And you can even fly almost right away. So basically, as divers, you already, don a exposure suit. But for snorkeling, you do too, depending on where you're going to be, how cool it's going to be, but mainly because of the sun. You're hanging out on the surface for a couple of hours, you can easily get burnt, or there's a lot of plankton in the water and you can easily get stung. I often even wear gloves because after about 2 hours, I can see that my hands start tanning or getting burned, and even your head. So wearing a buff or a hood or something to protect yourself. Obviously, you need your mask, fins, and snorkel. You can use whatever you have already. You don't have to use anything special. But some people may want to have something a little bit longer, fin, or a different mask, a little bit more low volume if they want to take a little bit of a dive down. Weight belts are just enough weight to wear with a weight belt. Weight belts are great because they drop you just below the surface. They give you the chance to get your camera under a wave, especially if there's a bit of a surface swell. But you don't want to put too much weight. As we know, as you dive down deeper, the pressure increases. And we don't have a buoyancy compensator to compensate for the negative buoyancy once you get back past 33 feet, if we can get past 33 feet. It's an individual situation when you're wearing a weight belt and how much weight you need. You just want to be comfortable and you want it just to put you just under the surface a little bit. Obviously, we need a wide angle camera rig, and that can be from a TG6 with a little wide angle adapter to some of these big rigs that people have these days. Strobes or no strobes, you can go without them, but a lot of times I find that using a strobe, it just adds a little bit more light in the foreground, especially if you're shooting against the light. Float arms and trays, you definitely need some of these if your rig is really heavy and it's uncomfortable to move around. You might need to put a little float on it, or a float tray. And some people actually need to put a little weight on it because it's too buoyant and you can't get it under the water without, it bobbing and so forth. And of course, you need some type of lanyard. So obviously there's a lot of different kinds of dome ports out there based on the kind of camera system you have, the type of lens that you have, and so forth. But the two here I'm highlighting, the first one is the 230 dome. It's a very big dome. And this one is better for split shots and rectilinear lenses, which means that the lenses, show a little bit more square edges. But it tends to be a lot more buoyant. Whereas the mini dome, it's absolutely wonderful to swim, when you're moving really quickly. It's very, very small. It's negative though, because there's not very much airspace in it, but it's really good for close-up focus wide angle. And this one, you might need to add some flotation to it if it seems too heavy in your hands. There's also water contact optics like the wet lens, or some call them WWL1s, or port with optics, which is a WACP, or a wide angle conversion port. And those have internal optics. The wet lens is really great because you can pop it on and off. But when you're snorkeling around and you're in and out of a boat, you have to remember to clear those bubbles or keep it submerged. And sometimes you can get a line in between the lens and the port. So you have to be very cognizant of that. The WACP is magnificent, but it's really heavy and cumbersome. So it has to be for somebody who really is comfortable moving a big rig around underwater. This is just a picture of a friend of mine who's shooting a D500, Nikon D500 in a Nauticam housing with a mini dome. It's probably a 10-17 lens. And she has a little strap around her neck to hold on to the camera system. She has a prosthetic, so this is easier for her to move around while she's shooting the dolphins off the Bahamas. Other people, the one on the left, he's got looks like a 170 millimeter dome, so it's a little medium-sized dome, but it looks like it was a little negative, so he added some flotation to it just on the arms. And then he has like a little wrist strap, I see. And then the other person has strobes attached and also flotation, because it's probably a 10-17 millimeter lens and a mini dome. And she's got a couple of strobes attached on that, with her lanyard being also a neck lanyard. And this person, has a nice little camera rig. It's probably neutrally buoyant or just slightly negative. So there's no flotation needed. And she's got a couple of strobes on there, and she's rigged and ready to go. So exposure controls, obviously this is important for all photography, but one of the main aspects is the ambient light for anything that you're doing on the surface. ISO sensitivity is important, obviously hitting the camera sensor, your f-stops, your shutter speeds, and your strobe light. All these elements we have to think about constantly when you're moving through the water. So with ambient light, you need to be mindful of the sun's position, what direction the light is coming from, the time of day, the angle of light in the water, how rough the surface of the water can also affect the way that the light comes through. And using the sun rays in composition, you can use that with higher shutter speeds. And setting custom white balance or edit your white balance in Lightroom. And metering the water is really important for ambient light photography. So this is just a picture of a Nikon information screen that shows the matrix meter, which that's what Nikon calls it. It's sort of the all wrong meter, and it's the one in the middle. Oops, sorry, bounce. So usually I set my meter reading at 2/3 stop under. And then I always typically shoot in manual. So I change my shutter speed, I change my f-stop, and I also change my ISO. But you don't have to. You can set it on shutter priority and set the shutter speed, and then the camera will figure out the f-stop, or vice versa with the aperture priority. Set the aperture and the camera will figure out the shutter speed. You can also shoot it on auto ISO. But if any function is in auto, you're wise to dial in some negative exposure compensation to keep the blues a little more like water and less like sky. They tend to blow out the blues a lot. And also with ISO, with auto ISO, you want to make sure you set a limit on it. At times it can go way high, especially if you're shooting silhouettes and so forth. So you don't want to have that much grain in your images, but in a lot of camera menus, you can adjust those things. So here's an example of shooting custom white balance, which I don't know if any of you tried it, but every camera is different. Nikons are kind of a pain. They take a 3-step process, where like Canons, I think it's like a 1-step process to shoot custom white balance. If you're just going to stay in the same depth level and the same light, then you can use it. But if you're going up and down and using different types of depths, then it's going to be, each time you have to reset that custom white balance. Whereas in auto white balance, you just set it on auto white balance and you don't worry about it till you get into Lightroom. I kind of like that way. Here's a couple of examples of just shooting auto white balance. This is off of Blue Heron Bridge when they first put those hammerhead statues. Now you can barely recognize them. And then this is the Christ of the Abyss down in the Keys, both natural light and all edited in Lightroom with just the white balance picker. Here's another example of just using the white balance in auto and then later editing in Lightroom. Again, another shot. Natural, ambient lighting, and editing in Lightroom. And again, another. So what's nice is as long as you have a lot of white or gray neutral tones, it's easy for that white balance picker to choose the white balance correctly. And of course, you know how to adjust that now. I'm sure many of you use Lightroom. So adding the strobe light, you need to be mindful of your position to avoid backscatter. Obviously, you're used to that already. But note, even the sunlight, the sunlight's angle can add backscatter to your shot because you're shooting into the light a lot of times and it just lights up everything underwater. So you can't always get away from it. Bright conditions often require more power for balanced light. And one-arm extensions to minimize movement. So I try to not to get 2 hinges on my strobes, 2 extensions. I try to just to use 1 extension to extend the strobes out sideways, and then I really lock them in, especially if I'm moving in the water, like with dolphins or, in a rough sea condition or something of that nature. It just makes it a little bit more, secure that I'm not going to be bumping or the movement of the water is not going to move my strobe and accidentally light up the water column. Playing with ambient light attributes like sunballs and sun rays and Snell windows. This takes a little bit of practice, but you can get amazing results. So here's an example of a guy, he's actually shooting video, but he has a single arm on each side, so that he's got some flotation there and he's keeping it rigid so that when the sharks come by and he's swimming around left to right, those lights don't move. Here's an example of a guy with a 2-arm extension on each side. And you can see that the strobes can kind of move a little bit more, but he may have control over it and may lock those down pretty well. As long as it's not he doesn't have too much movement going on, his strobes will probably be fine. So here's an example of getting really crispy defined sunballs and sun rays. And, in order to get this, you really need to shoot at high camera sync speeds, the highest that your camera will go. So like in this instance, I shot it at a shutter speed of 1/320th of a second at f/16. And ISO 250. So normally this would be really dark if you were shooting, across the water or downward, but because you're directly shooting right into the sun and I'm only 3 feet under the surface of the water. So it's kind of a unique situation, and it took me a little bit to get exactly the right exposure. It's not easy, but I think my strobe power here was about at half power as well. Strobes are needed for overcast conditions to help make the subject pop. You already know this for diving and shooting all kinds of subjects, but when you're free diving or when you're snorkeling and you come down to a shallow reef and there is no ambient light that's bright enough, it's going to look dull. So you definitely need to add a little light. So having just even one strobe on the subject would make it look really great. So bright conditions need strobe light to counter against the sunlight. Just like in the first image, even on a super bright shallow reef, you definitely need to add that strobe light in order to balance the backlight. Shallow habitats. So you can free dive anywhere or snorkel. Coral reefs, mangroves, open oceans, rivers, springs, around rocks, caves, overhangs, wrecks, piers. There's so many locations that you can play. Find the best light sources. Look around, see if it's clear that day. Check the surface conditions. Is it calm? Look for reflections if it's calm. Reflections are a wonderful thing to get when, especially when you're shooting marine life, or even a very shallow coral reef. And work on your composition. Have a little negative space. You can shoot down, you can shoot up, you can shoot in any direction when you're on the surface. Play with the surface of the actual water line. So here's an example of shallow reef. It's strobe lit, super shallow. It wasn't a really bright day, but you can still see reflected sunlight, reflected reef on the surface. Here's that purple reef in the beginning that I showed you. This is what it looked like, just shooting the reef straight on. Here's a very shallow reef. I think it was almost touching the surface of the water. Where now in the Snell's window, I can get the surface of the island in the background, which is really kind of fun. Surf breaks if you're brave enough, or if you come up during a dive and there is some waves breaking on a rock, you can get some interesting surface textures to make your image just a little bit different than another one. But you really got to work on those settings because you want to stop the action, you want to fill the light in front of you, and really get good depth of field. Mangrove territories. We have lots of mangrove here in Florida, but I've never really, gone around the mangroves in the Keys. I think would probably be the best areas because they probably have the clearest water in the shallows. But in other locations like the Solomon Islands or Indonesia or the Philippines, or even in the Bahamas, they have wonderful mangrove areas. And a lot of times you'll find incredible amount of life around them. So this is strobe lit. The fish are strobe lit and underneath has a bit more light. You can even see reflection and a little bit of the Snell window here. Here's two other mangrove shots. These were in Indonesia, obviously with a soft coral. But one's a split shot and one's not. A similar location, almost the same settings, slightly different. And then there's shallow caves. This is a little cave in Curacao. If you've ever been there, it's called Blue Curacao. And I didn't even know there were fish in it when I went in there. There's a big air pocket. So it was during surface interval and I went in and they said, oh, if you look out, it's just going to be all blue. And I said, oh, great. That sounds great. I'll take a picture. And then all these fish were in there. And thankfully I had my strobes attached. So it took me a little bit to try and get the exposure right. I kept testing it and I finally got it right. And it was kind of a cool image that I've never done before. Sea lagoons. In a lot of places in the Western Pacific and Indonesia and the Philippines, they have trapped seawater lagoons where there's jellyfish. Actually, I think this one's an open sea lagoon because this is a different type of jellyfish. But they are super cool to try and capture, especially when they're right up against the surface. So in order to get this black background, obviously I had to shoot at a small aperture, and yeah, there wasn't that much light. As you can see, the top, even the surface, it was sort of, I think, at dusk time. Just a little hint of light to light up the jellyfish, and that's it. And even shallow wrecks in the Bahamas and the Keys and lots of places. There's always life around shallow wrecks. Here is Maravagi Bay in the Solomons, where everybody's diving and I'm just tooling around the surface trying to find something else to shoot to add to my portfolio. Coastal ocean, there's so many things, so many animals that come near the coasts. And this, if you have ever gone to Baja, Mexico, there's so many new trips now that people are doing that are just ocean safaris. And one of them is to see these beautiful mobulas that are gathering. Some people even get lucky to see the orcas coming in to feed them. But in this case, it was just the mobulas, and I was happy with that. And then deep ocean, where you see big whales, where you see pods of dolphins, where you see turtles and sea lions, you see striped marlins, and anything else that come your way, oceanic sharks and different types of whales. So many different environments to play in. Oops. So marine animals, many types of animals visit the shallow waters like I described. We need to always be of our surroundings. And then there's destination specific trips like to see dolphins, manatees, mantas specifically, sailfish, sharks, sea lions, whales, whale sharks. More and more of these trips are becoming really popular and they're awesome to do. And it really doesn't require you to be in like this, fantastic shape or be a world record freediver or anything like this. I mean, they're really pretty just surface stuff. I mean, some people do dive down and, are pretty good at it, but overall, I've just done most of my stuff right on the surface.
Tanya, could I ask a question?
Yeah,
Where did you shoot that Nautilus?
I do. Well, I was ready. I was prepared for that. So the Nautiluses are mainly in the Western Pacific Oceans from Palau on over. They really like deep, deep, deep water. Obviously, it's the oldest living fossil and they live in thousands of feet of water. In the Solomon Islands, I was there. I go every few years. And one year in particular, I was in a remote village. And early in the morning, we were getting ready for a dive, and some villagers came in with this live Nautilus. And I'm like, oh, please, 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 let me photograph this thing. And they didn't want me to because they don't want to encourage the locals to, collect these things. But they allowed me, and I tell you, it was only, I don't know, maybe 15 minutes that I got to play with this thing. It kept wanting to swim down and very quickly. So I had to keep holding on to it and pushing it back up towards the surface. But afterwards, I gave it back and I asked them to please, release it into the deep. They typically catch them at night. They trap them in about 300 feet of water. And yeah, they're not supposed to be doing that anymore. So hopefully they won't. But it is quite a special creature. And it was a unique experience. And this is all natural light. I don't know if you can see my ISO. Is this this in the way? I don't know if that's in the way. If you can, I'm sorry, the camera settings there. So I shot it at ISO 500 because it was early in the morning. But I had just enough light and I wanted to make sure I had the shutter speed at least at 125th of a second because, it was moving. It was moving a lot. So it turned out well. So crocodiles. Crocodiles are wonderful animals to shoot if you get a chance to do this in Cuba or in Chinchorro Banks off of Mexico. It is so unique. This happens during surface interval if you get to go out to the Garden of the Queen, and they just call them. They go to a specific location and they call for any kind of crocodile to show up, and they usually do, and they give them a piece of chicken or something. But the first time I went in, I was a little nervous, but after that, I wasn't nervous anymore. And they're pretty seemingly docile. They don't move very much, especially if you are in the water and you've got this big camera rig in front of you. But this one was a strobe lit, very light strobe. And if you ever go there, you really, really have to be careful because there's so much silt and it just will puff up with a breath. So, you know, you can see it sort of in the left of the image there. There's a bunch of silt that the crocodile actually kicked up. But it is a cool experience. So shooting really, really shallow, these half beaks and houndfish and ballyhoo and all these types of fish that love to like just cruise right at the surface of the water. It's such a cool image to try and get. And you just have to be patient with them, but eventually they'll come closer and closer to you and you could get shots like this where they're near, you know, the surface, you could see through the surface of the water. Sea turtles are great. You can see them anywhere. It's really nice when you're in the water and they've just come up to the surface. But always look out at the end of your dive. You never know if you'll see a turtle coming up, or you can watch it from down below to see that it comes back down or it goes back up to take a breath. But taking these surface shots of them is, I think, is really cool. And if you have a calm sea, you get a nice reflection like that. This is a really new situation. I always look around my surroundings whenever I get in the water. This was a remote sort of dive in Indonesia, and I'd never been there before. And it was like sort of this rocky alcove. And as we descended on scuba, I looked and I thought, what is all that silver? Like a little bit at a distance. And I had never seen anything like it, where there's thousands, I mean, thousands of needlefish all in this cove. So I quickly went back to the surface and I ditched my tank and I just did my whole dive right there because I couldn't believe how many fish there were. I've never seen anything like that. This is a wonderful sea turtle because he or she, I don't know, she maybe, just didn't even care about me. It kept going down and feeding, coming up, surfacing, taking a breath, and swimming around. I was with it probably for an hour. So I had a chance to take so many different kinds of pictures of it, but I loved this one the most because of the sun rays and the sort of dramatic effect. And I had a strobe on it, one strobe. Manta rays, a lot of them love to play in the shallows. This one was not feeding, it was circling our boat. And I thought, oh, I'm getting it. So I got in and just took some pictures of it off the surface, and it just stayed around. It was so curious. It was a very small manta. And then I decided to start swimming down underneath it, and it kept coming closer and closer to me. This one actually is really pretty close. Sea snakes, they're not my favorite, but you know, they're kind of cool when they hit the surface. And when you can get a reflection, it's really interesting. So I was just snorkeling around in this little shallow reef and this guy came to the surface. I saw it actually coming up. So I swam over really quickly to it. They don't stay on the surface very long because they're scared a bird's going to come down and grab them. So they take a few breaths and then down they go. But it's really kind of fun to see them on the surface like that. So I was on a trip shooting the oceanic white tips, and mahis came in. And so it was kind of a bonus to see a mahi. So little shallow reef sharks, you can see these in French Polynesia just about anywhere on any shallow reef. They tend to hang out by the boats and or near shore, very shallow reef, and you can get in the water with them, and they're really pretty docile. When you have calm water like this is when I start looking for that reflection to get. These also are well fed in French Polynesia. If you ever get a chance to go to Rangiroa or Whakarava, these big Napoleon wrasse, they will just come right to the surface. They almost come right up to your dome port. They're so friendly over there. And of course, whale sharks, Isla Mujeres or Oslob, or so many places around the planet now, you have opportunities to see whale sharks and photograph them. I think still one of the better places is shooting in Isla Mujeres because you have so many whale sharks and there's so many different ways you can take a picture of a whale shark. And with wide angle, you have to be really careful that you're not distorting their faces and so forth, which is very easily done when they come too close. Sea lions are super playful and will come by and check you out for a little bit. This one, we were way, way offshore in Magdalena Bay, and that's in Mexico. And actually, I was looking for the, striped marlin, but we never had any. And instead, we had beautiful conditions like this, and occasionally we'd see some really cool things. So this was one that showed up again. That calm sea allowed for a beautiful reflection. Dolphins. So dolphins, I do a little special thing on dolphins because they're really difficult. They're difficult to photograph. It takes a lot of energy to photograph dolphins. You mostly shoot them with ambient light. Occasionally I've used strobes for dusk dives or not dusk dives, but dusk snorkels and night snorkels. They're very fast moving, so you need to choose a higher shutter speed. You definitely may have to bump up your ISO depending on the time of day and the conditions. F8 is great for depth of field, and F8 is great for a lot of surface shots. You definitely want to shoot at a higher frame rate. So if your camera can do five per second or 10 per second or whatever your highest frame rate is good. I find that when I'm looking at the camera roll, I notice, little minor changes in the way the dolphin looks or the angle, or maybe his fin is, in one way or another, it can make a shot or break a shot. The light changes constantly, so you may want to shoot auto ISO. This is a good reason to shoot auto ISO because you may be shooting, across the water or downward, and all of a sudden the dolphin comes up over your head, and now you're silhouetting that dolphin. So unless you're really, really quick at changing your settings, you probably missed it. So here's just an example of how beautiful the light is against a dolphin. And, these are the Atlantic spotted dolphins off of the Bahamas, and they are wonderful to photograph. They play. It's a beautiful background canvas to work with. It's usually only like 25 to 30 feet deep. Most of the time it's this color blue. So it's really just a beautiful place to take pictures. Every kind of setting, every kind of way. You get adults, you get calves, you get pairs, you get groups, different bottoms, different background blues, different textures in the surface and the bottom. Some come really close, some just zip by, some like to play with seaweed. You just never know what you're going to get when you get out there. But for sure, you're going to get some good pictures. This is a mixed pod of young spotted dolphins and bottlenose. The two in the foreground that are lit better by the sun are spotteds, and below are all, and then the back are all bottlenose dolphin. Sometimes you got to shoot against the light, and it's really difficult to get a nice, clean image. There's a lot of stuff in the water, and also the light is it's really dark. They're very shadowed. So with a little help from Lightroom, you can bring that out again, but you really got to work on your camera metering and try to nail your exposure the best you can. Here's an example of a night photography. This is an amazing experience. If you ever go out with a dolphin, dream. It's a liveaboard boat out of Riviera Beach, and they have been doing this for, I don't know, 30 years. And if they have the dolphins during the afternoon, they will try to lure them to the boat with the big lights. And the reason why they like it is because it attracts all the flying fish and squid. So once the dolphins show up, you get in the water, which is pitch dark. but you're up against the boat, so you're, you know, relatively comfortable. And the dolphins just zip past you right and left. It's really, really, really cool. And there's just enough light actually from the cast of the boat that you can focus. You don't need a focus light. So that's the amazing thing, is that you actually, I shoot the D500 or D850, and they were able to capture the I think it was the 8-15 lens that I used on these, was able to focus on them, no problem. Sharks. Sharks are slower moving. So you can play with your shutter speeds a bit more. Use light in your composition as much as possible. If shooting with a fisheye lens, consider the most flattering angle for your subject. I said that before because a lot of people shoot sharks a little too close to the lens and they get like this rounded face and it looks really kind of strange. Understand the threat behavior and the nature of your subject and species. Obviously, if a tiger shark swam into this picture, I'd be like, okay, you know, I need to back off a little, you know, but a little black tip shark, yeah, you know, I'm not worried about him so much, or a nurse shark. So nurse sharks are really cute. There's a few places that, you know, they'll come right to the surface, and one of them is in the Exumas. There's this place where there's just nurse sharks everywhere, and I don't even know if it's because they feed them or what it is, but in the Maldives as well. And we were just there. I was on a liveaboard boat, and they were just coming up to the back to the stern platform when everybody was eating lunch. I was like, hey, there's nurse sharks back here. Nobody wanted to take any pictures of the nurse sharks. So I was like, all right, well, I'm going. And so I got these pictures. So I did a trip to do the oceanics. I don't know if any of you've done this, but it is really, really amazing. They're kind of a scary shark, but once you're in the water, you know, get a little more comfortable. I thought initially that I only wanted to do scuba with them, but after I snorkeled with them, I was like, I'll never do scuba with them. The light is just so beautiful, how it hits their bodies, and they're so interesting looking, and the way they move. They can turn on a dime, and I'm not kidding. You can shoot them in different, you know, phases of light there as well. I was only there for 5 days, and we had every kind of condition to photograph them in, and each one of them was really different. Yeah, this is how close they get. I was starting to shoot them with a slow shutter speed because, you know, you're there so much and you're just shooting the same subject. So I wanted to try and get some different shots. So I had this one that kept coming in and bumping on the dome port. So I said, okay, buddy, let's see what we can do with you. And so that's what I did with that one. You can make some artistic, you know, impressions with a blue canvas background. And a little bit about shooting, you know, consecutive photos of the same shot, or shooting 5 frames per second, even though your strobe power might not hold up, you know, it just depends on how good your strobes are. But at least you could get 1, 2, or 3 shots in order. But it's really nice when you can get a shot and then get the next shot to tell a story a little bit about how close that shark came. He had to close his nictitating membrane. That's pretty cool. This guy actually was just going for a little piece of bait, but I just love the reflection, and the water just didn't even look like water. It wouldn't have even looked like water, but he was pushing it with his nose. And even shooting down, it's really a cool thing. Like if you have a whale shark coming under you, that's a beautiful image with that black and white dots. The same with some sharks and rays and so forth. If you have a sunny day like this and you can use the light rays to your advantage, it makes beautiful images. Even a diver descending through those light rays makes a beautiful image from the surface. So whales are a wonderful subject. They're huge. It's obviously ambient light photography only. I mean, whale sizes are so big that their pectoral fins, especially for humpbacks, are 15 feet long. So when they extend them out, that's about as close as you're going to get to a humpback, unless it's really, really curious and coming, super close. They require a very wide angle lens. The subjects are often very dark and the background is often dark, or blue against blue, or gray against blue. So you really have to choose the appropriate settings, meter the water, and then focus on your fin or your buddy, or lock focus on the whale once you do get focused. Because a lot of times when you start shooting, I've noticed that the auto focus you'll lose the focus because of the non-contrast between the whale and the water. Whales are fairly slow moving when they're sort of logging at the surface and sort of rolling around. But the minute they start moving that tail, it's obviously, 20 fin kicks to their one. But you need to really be mindful of your position and distance. I mean, it's pretty amazing how aware they are of you and your distance from them. So usually they will avoid you, but on occasion you'll get a young one that will absolutely get close to you, and it could, not be a good thing because they are pretty powerful. So when shooting whales, just like when shooting dolphins, I typically shoot continuous frames because you never know if their eye was open or closed, or you may capture a moment where the pectoral fin was hidden, or now it's exposed, or something different. So it's always good to take, a sequence of images as they're approaching you. There's lots of different settings that you're going to come across because of how dark it is, or how bright it is, or how rough the ocean is. You're in typically rougher seas when you're with whales. Very rarely do you have those perfectly flat, calm conditions. So this is where it's really good to wear a weight belt, just to get you below that surface line so you can really get eye to eye. Humpbacks move a lot. They may go down to sleep, but then they come up and they breathe, and then they may kick again and go down. Sometimes they're being chased by other whales, and they'll move quite rapidly. Sometimes they decide to breach right next to you. When they are active and they have a humpback that is pursuing another humpback, it's really difficult to get in the water with them. So at times we have used pole cams, or have used what I call Tanya cam, and that is putting my housing over the side of the boat. And so I'll shoot a few frames, check the exposure, reset the exposure, and generally put my focus in manual because I don't want to have any autofocus issues, and actually catch some amazing pictures while the boat is moving next to these whales. And this is one example. It's a cheat. Here's a really nice surface condition with a mother and a calf, and the calf came pretty close. If the calf gets any closer, the nose, the rostrum is going to look a little bowed. So I usually don't get any closer than this because otherwise it starts looking weird. But this is really like not even 15 feet away. So it's pretty special. This is another one of those amazing moments where you probably are not in the water, and this is called a heat run, when you have several males that are vying for a female, and they are really aggressive and they're vocalizing and they're hitting each other and so forth. But we were moving along this group of rowdies and did the same technique where we stuck our housing underwater, looked at the first couple of shots, set the settings, and then dropped it back down. And this is what we came up with on a few occasions. So it's pretty cool. A lot of times you're shooting against the light. You don't really have a choice because you're with a guide and they tell you where you have to be. If it was my choice, I'd be on the other side because I always want to shoot where the sun is over my shoulder and lighting the subject. That's my preference. But in this case, we didn't have a choice. This is where the whale came up. But you make the best of it. It's still a beautiful image. And this way you get your light rays and so forth, but it is towards the end of the day, so it is a bit dark. So you have to bump up your ISO on this one. Same for this one. End of day and mom and calf swimming away, but it sort of is a nice ending to the day. Behavioral shots gives a still shot animation. Playing, feeding, fighting, mating, shooting continuous frames to capture the moment. Obviously, you want to use higher shutter speeds. And if using strobes with high frame rates, lower the power of the strobe so that the strobe can keep up. Like I mentioned before, sometimes it doesn't, but hopefully, you know, you'll get 1 or 2 or 3 in there that will be good ones. This is a case of dolphins at dusk. They play a lot before they start feeding and before the night falls, when the squid rise to the surface. So generally on the bank during the day, they're sleeping. And they may look awake to us, but most of the time they're sleeping. And it's this time when they're really, really active. And so it was a really great time to try out shooting them with strobes just to get ready for the nighttime. And we had just enough light that I could still get a blue background in the frame. Sea lions. I don't know if you've ever been to Mexico, La Paz. There's a sea lion rookery there called Los Islotes. I would put it on your to-do list, your bucket list, because when there's pups, they're everywhere and it is so much fun. There's so many and they just love to play in every which way. It is really a joy to be scuba diving or snorkeling on the surface. There's a beautiful reef there as well. Whale sharks, so you saw them at Isla Mujeres. This is at Oslo in the beginning, about 2011, when they were just starting the whole thing. And I was able to get out there and there weren't that many people yet. So this is when they were feeding with the krill. I'm assuming they still do it, but now I heard you can go diving with them. But I kind of like this because there's no bubbles. So again, you know, as a diver, you know, you wouldn't be able to get this unless you just sat there with your scuba tank on. But I was just a few feet below the surface. I wasn't even deep. This is a rare shot for me. This is Magdalena Bay. This is also in Mexico. And there's a huge bird island and a bird sanctuary with, I don't know, thousands and thousands of pelicans. And all the fishermen clean their fish. And our captain had a bucket of bait, and you know, they wanted to show us that you could take pictures of them. So the only thing is we're not in the water. We just drop our cameras over, take a few shots to look at the settings, to set the settings. And unfortunately, it was a really dark day. It was very overcast, and the water was not very clear. It's very green. However, so you can see the settings, you know, it's ISO 500 there, f8, and my shutter speed is at 1/800th of a second because they're so fast at getting the bait. You almost I missed it every single time. I always get it with their mouth closed. So I finally said, okay, that's it. Let me bump up the shutter speed. And I finally got one, just one out of like 500. So, you know, it pays to keep going. This is a beautiful day in Mexico off of Isla Mujeres when it was calm and the light was just lighting up the whale sharks. And you can see there is particulate in the water, but all that is eggs. It's all eggs. And the light is just, you know, the sunlight is lighting it up. But it was a beautiful day and it's a fun place to go. Here's a little closer, feeding at the surface with him getting into his botella, what they call a bottle position. Here's a shot of a manta train where the mantas are feeding on copepods. and they're just going around and around in circles. And it was a very dark afternoon, but I had enough light, so I didn't have to bump up the ISO too high. But it was really cool. You had to dive down a little bit to get closer to them because they were a little bit deeper, but it was really, really exceptional to be able to witness that. These dolphins are sleeping. Like I said, during the day, they typically sleep. So they were really just super calm and just cruising. I was able to keep up with them, just kicking alongside of them, which is really normally very difficult to do. But in this case, I was able to do that. And it was just behind the island of Bimini. So the water is a little bit greener there. But since they're close to the surface and I'm pretty close to them, it looks pretty clear. Turtles mating on the surface. Sometimes you can capture it. I was a little afraid that I was going to appear like the predator because turtles are very leery of tiger sharks at the surface. But these guys were really into it, so I was able to capture a lot of pictures of them. And manatees, of course. If you've ever been to the springs, you'll see lots of manatees, but in this occasion, we had quite the mating train. We had several manatees going after one single female, and it was kind of scary underwater because they don't even care if you're there. They will mow you over. So people adding the human element brings reality to the image, gives a perspective, dimension, size, tells a story, adds some emotion, and even some culture. Like this young boy who fished out a 1941 Coke bottle from a World War II wreck site in the Solomons. Just a size perspective from whale shark to human. Oops, sorry. And then like the shallow coral reef or the size of the elkhorn against the diver, or the swimmer next to the humpback whales. And then just adding a person in a very blank canvas can just give it a little bit more, tell a story. Or even somebody swimming, that's Kevin, swimming with a manatee, a cuddly manatee. Or somebody having a private moment with a pair of dolphins, dancing with the dolphins. This was a very difficult maneuver for me because I had to keep up with them and I had to keep going to the surface and breathing. And this gal, she was like a mermaid. She didn't have to breathe.
Wow.
Yeah. If you ever go to any of the Western islands in the Pacific or Indonesia or Philippines, there's so many cultures there that they'll love the water. The kids are in the water everywhere. And I find them to be great subjects. They'll dive down and make funny faces, and they're so happy when they're in the ocean. The other one is a man who owns, actually, this is his reef, and he's made it into a nature reserve. And so I wanted to take a picture of him and his reef with a split shot. Silhouettes. So a silhouette should be black or near black. Pick a shape that has strong form, sun or bright water behind the subject. Turn off your strobes. Stop down your aperture to f11++. A high shutter speed helps also with the sun rays. Finding subjects that you can shoot easily, like turtles, is a great way, and you can also get the snell window in there. Dolphins, of course. As soon as they get near the sun, you can black them out. Mantas, if you can get underneath them, if they're on the surface. Or even a kid paddling a canoe. I think this kid, I told him, stop, don't move. And I swam under him and took the photograph. Whale shark is Isla Mujeres and a person swimming next to him. And of course, other dolphin shots that I've taken. Split images. So large dome port give you more control of the water surface. It's easier to keep both top and bottom in focus. I sometimes use a float to help buoy my rig because it's a little bit more comfortable and it's easier to hold it level. Depending on the time of day, keep the sun to your back to help light the subject. Or shoot against the light early and late in the morning for a little bit more dramatic look. You can bump up the ISO, stop down the f-stop, and that way you can have, you know, decent settings to photograph. Keep your shutter between 1/25th and 1/250th of a second, and use strobes on low power for just a hint of light. But be careful of the strobe positioning. You're gonna, you know, at times you can get some backscatter very easily. You know, you're not paying attention, you're more concentrating on getting a level line, and then your strobe kind of went left or right. Shoot on continuous frames, it really helps. And then to reduce water droplets, there's no grand answer to that because I've tried everything and it's I don't know, maybe one of you guys know, but I've tried everything to try and not get water droplets on my dome port, but it's inevitable. So sometimes you know, there's things that you can do to minimize them, but they're always going to be around. This is some of the examples of a water droplet. One is in the sky and one is over the bungalow there. Now in Lightroom, you can fix them pretty easily. In the past, when you're shooting film, you couldn't do that. Oh, and there's a really long water droplet off to the left after the bungalow. You can see it kind of smears the forest a little bit there. So here's a great image, and then, oh my God, you got to go and fix all that. So, you know, trying to get those water droplets out is always a challenge. Here's two split shots. One is strobe lit, and the other one is sunlit. Same location, just one was, you know, the sun came out finally, and it was the same trip and same settings. You can see in the background of the sunlit one how stirred up the water is. We kept having to move down the bank in order to get away from the cloud of dust, the cloud of silt. Oops. Some shots, you know, you're not going to get a level line, and that's okay. It doesn't have to be perfect. It all depends on your dome port, and sometimes you get bubbles like that one. Other times you get more of a wavy line, and this one was shot with a mini dome, so it's not the best dome to shoot a split shot with, but it still came out kind of cool. And then you get those bonus split shots that you didn't even try for it, but the water was moving in low, you know, small swells and just kept rising and lowering as I was photographing this olive Ridley. It was sunning himself in off Magdalena Bay. I didn't really like the bottom of this, but I wanted to take these palm trees. It was such a pretty surface shot, but I did want to show that it was in the water. I couldn't find an area of just sand ripples there, so I just took the shot anyway. And of course, you need pictures of swimming pigs. If you ever go to the Bahamas and the Exumas, they have an island with pig beach there, and it's just hilarious. There's so many pigs, and they come out immediately and swim around, and you can take all kinds of silly pictures of pigs. This is in the Solomons. I came up from a dive, and I couldn't even believe these. I was like, what are they floating on? I couldn't figure it out because I wasn't really close to them. So I ditched my tank again and swam over to them with my camera rig, and I asked them if they minded if I took some pictures. And I was shooting a mini dome, so you can see that my water line's terrible, and also there's bubbles on it. But I didn't care. I love the action of it, and the fact that they're just floating on this big old log. And of course, the Billy Kiki is in the background. Go vertical. So taking split shots, going vertical is a little bit easier to work with because you have a little more room. But only if you're able to get a footing to balance yourself without hitting or damaging the reef. I mean, there's a lot of places that have very shallow reefs, and you might not even be able to take a split shot because there's just everything is so live around it that you can't get close enough to photograph the reef and any kind of surface subject. In this case, I think I'll feature the photo down below in another section, and I'll show you the whole picture. But you can play in shallow water shooting splits, and you can stand up and you can practice with it in a pool. You can practice anywhere to try and work on the splits, but shooting vertical is definitely easier. And then using just one strobe to light. You don't need that much light.
Send her a message.
Yeah, so the image on the right with the reef, these were like little bommies. And so I was able to get on the side of it where there was some dead patches kind of, and sort of rest my foot there so I could get a footing. But most places in the Solomons you cannot do it because there's just the reef is so healthy all the way to the surface. Of course, the piggies, it doesn't matter. You're in sand and it's super easy. And then you can take selfies of yourself and a whale shark or a coral reef. And that is all I have for you.
Tanya, that was really spectacular. I don't know what I was expecting, but I wasn't expecting that much.
Well, I know you had it on for the whales, but I actually had this for everything, so you have a better idea to see how many pictures and what types of pictures you can take.
I
Just
know
from
I was
water.
I was kind of fixated early on because I know you were taking a group down to what is it, whale watching down around
The Silver Bank.
Where are you going?
Silver Bank, the Silver Bank.
Yeah.
Dominican Republic. Yeah.
Tanya, this is Craig. Thanks a lot for your presentation. That was just really super, and I have a really large audience here today.
Wonderful.
Yeah, we're gonna have to move on. They actually kicked us out here at 9 o'clock, hard stop, and we have a little photo contest to run through too. So stick around and watch that if you got a minute. And
Sure. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Just a quick announcement. I forgot to mention. Many of you were at the workshop that we had on Saturday all about lighting, so strobes and continuous lighting. And the reason I wanted to mention it, it's out online now. If you didn't come to the workshop, you can go watch it there. Also, it was in the afternoon, and we were in this room which has all this beautiful lighting. Unfortunately, we couldn't really see the screen very well, so and that's unfortunate. David had some great photos, and I had some maybe not so great video, but it's certainly better to watch it online. So go to the HUPS.org YouTube channel, and it's out there right now. So Martin, if we can prevail on you to bring that up. And I'll mention, I'm sorry for you guys online, but we do this every time. After the meeting, we're gonna go have Mexican food. So you guys that are here, think about whether you want to go La Tapatia, just down the street on Bel Air, and we'll get a head count so that they know what's coming. So, photo contest.
Justin.
Did you get my ratings?
Can't believe I got on top of the men's finally. I mean,
Congrats.
Congrats, Justin. We had zilch. That was all pulled from GoPro
I'm like,
video.
that's only gonna last this month. It's only gonna last this month. I already know.
Not enough people have it.
Okay, thanks, everybody.
Can I have a showing of hands of how many people to go to London?
Who's taking them to dinner?
One, two, keep your hands
That
up.
was great, Tanya. That was awesome, by the way.
Thank you.
It was awesome. I saw you went to Fakarava South, the best place on the planet, period, the end.
And Tanya, thank you very much.
Thanks again, Tanya. That was really super.
Welcome. Bye.
Guys,
Thank you so much.
you guys enjoy dinner.
Bye, Brian, Justin, Jesse.